Hello my friends, Amy Esther here, and today I wanted to share with you all about Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome or PCOS. So you guys, I have several chronic illnesses, including PCOS, Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome, and several others. You can learn about them in the links below in the description of this video. I talk all about them on my channel, so if you're interested in more about the chronic illnesses I experience, as well as more about PCOS, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I make videos about living life with chronic illness and how to live an amazing life while living with chronic illness, and how to live an amazing life with PCOS. So if you're interested in more, make sure you subscribe. Today we are learning all about PCOS, all the things. We're going to talk about what it is, how to get diagnosed, what do you do if you have it, all of those things. Okay, so first of all, what is PCOS? So PCOS stands for Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome, and basically Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome is just a hormone disorder. It's an imbalance of hormones in your body that can cause a lot of different problems. And this is something that only happens in women because polycystic ovaries, kind of clear that it's a woman-only disease, but it is really not a fun thing to deal with. There's a lot of super annoying symptoms with it. So basically, your body's hormones are just imbalanced. So I love the way, if you guys ever watch Mama Dr. Jones, I love her. She's like one of my favorite YouTubers. So she is an OBGYN and she posts lots of really good content. And she has a video about PCOS. I think it's called like PCOS myths or something. But she explained it really, really well. So go watch her video if you want maybe a better explanation. She has a little drawing and everything, but I'll kind of recap what she said, which is that in normal people, your body triggers hormones in your brain, which then are sent to the ovaries and trigger the ovaries into ovulating. And ovulating is what releases an egg and is how you get pregnant, and how you start your period. Once you ovulate, 2 weeks later your period starts, or you get pregnant, basically. Sort of the idea. But when you have PCOS, those hormones get lost when they're going back down to the ovaries, and basically they take a lot longer to get there. And during this time, your body is a little confused. Your ovaries are confused, and they are trying to ovulate. And so instead of actually ovulating, because the hormones aren't there, they develop the polycystic ovaries, which actually are just follicles. They develop these little follicles all over the ovaries. So I'll post a picture here of a normal ovary versus a polycystic ovary. So all of these little spots around the ovary, we call them cysts, like polycystic, but I actually talked to my personal OBGYN about this, and he said they're not actually cysts, they are just follicles. So they're basically like really small, tiny pre-cyst, right? They haven't quite made it there, but that's what we call it. And so a lot of people get confused because it's called polycystic ovaries. You think that they're all cyst, which is not necessarily true. And I think Mama Dr. Jones talks a little bit about that in her video as well, that a big misconception is that you get a lot of cysts. Now, I do get a lot of cysts personally, but I also have a lot of other things going on that can be causing that. But I do also have the polycystic ovaries, so I also have the follicles there. So that's basically what PCOS is. So in order to get diagnosed with PCOS, you typically have 3 criteria to hit. So one thing is that your periods are typically irregular. So if you're having irregular periods, which can mean really long cycles. So even if they come, for me, this happens to me. They come at the same time, but they're too long. So that's considered irregular. Some people will have, 2 periods, 2 months in a row have a period and then not have a period for 6 months. Some people will just not have periods at all. Pretty much anything outside of the normal is considered irregular. So you will have irregular periods, which is one criteria. Another criteria is that your hormones will probably be imbalanced. So this hormone imbalance is typically like a testosterone imbalance. You also will probably have some like insulin problems. There's a lot of hormone problems. But they'll typically test you for like your testosterone levels, and if you have high abnormal testosterone or other hormones. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a woman who deals with PCOS, sharing my story. So make sure you talk to your doctor about any of this. This is just to provide information for you. But if you have some hormone imbalances, that's the second criteria. And then the third criteria is the polycystic ovaries. So you have that ring of follicles, or the polycystic things, the little follicles around your ovaries. And typically it is in like the ring shape. And I can see that on an ultrasound. My doctor can see that on an ultrasound, but I can even see it. Like if he pulls up my ultrasound, I'm like, yep, I definitely see those little spots all around my ovaries. And so that's something that they do with an ultrasound. So they do the ultrasound, they do blood tests, and then just your history of your periods is usually how you get diagnosed with PCOS. So the symptoms of PCOS are, we already talked about irregular periods. So maybe you have really long periods, like you bleed for a really long time. Like for me, it's about 8 days, which is pretty long. And then you probably have a long time between periods. They're irregular. They kind of come and go. Sometimes they're 2 months, sometimes they're 4 months, or you just have really long ones. We kind of already talked about that. But anything irregular, you might have really heavy periods. You might have cysts that rupture. That's not something that happens in everyone with PCOS, but that's definitely something that can happen, is that those follicles could turn into cysts and then rupture. So that is something that can happen as well. Typically, if you have PCOS, you have insulin resistance, which can cause you to be overweight or to gain weight really quickly, which is the worst. Like no one wants that. Oh, it's the worst. But that can happen. That's pretty common with PCOS, is insulin resistance and being overweight or obese. You can also have another really unfortunate symptom of PCOS is like manly features. So you might have some balding, you might have hair growth on your face and other places on your body. And that is from the testosterone. Like increased testosterone can give you like more of like the manly features, which is, again, the worst, because PCOS is the worst. So that's just what I've decided. And going along with hormones, you might have like oily, like a lot of acne in your skin. Again, PCOS is the worst. It's like, can we put all the worst symptoms in one disease? That's PCOS. At least that's how I feel about it. And then the worst of the worst symptom of PCOS is infertility. And I hate this. I just hate that this is something that happens in the world. And something that we struggle with is infertility. And the reason that we are infertile with PCOS, first of all, there's a difference between infertility and being sterile. Sterile means you cannot have kids. Infertility means that it's harder to have kids. So don't ever think that because you have PCOS, you can't have children. I have PCOS and endometriosis and like a zillion other chronic illnesses, and I have conceived children. I am actually, as I'm filming this, currently pregnant. And I have a living child here. I have had a few miscarriages, unfortunately, but I've been pregnant quite a few times. Even though supposedly it's really hard to get pregnant with PCOS. And the reason it's so hard is because you ovulate so much less than everyone else, but you still do usually ovulate at some point. So whether it's maybe you have a period every 3 months, you have, you have how many chances would that be a year? 3, 6, 9, 12. You have 4 chances a year to get pregnant, when a normal woman has 12 chances. So that's why it's so much harder to get pregnant. It's not because it's impossible. It's because you're ovulating so much less than everyone else that it takes you a lot longer to get pregnant. It can take a healthy woman up to a year to get pregnant. And that's 12 times of trying to get pregnant, right? And if you're only ovulating 4 times a year, you multiply that by how many years you have to do that. That's 3 years to get the same amount of ovulation if you're ovulating every 3 months, if that's your situation. And then another reason it's really hard is because your ovulation isn't always just normal. Maybe you ovulated last month and this month, and then you aren't ovulating for 6 more months, right? It's hard to track because you just don't know when you're going to ovulate. And so it's 100% possible to get pregnant with PCOS. There's a lot of different ways. In fact, I have an entire video about natural ways to get pregnant with PCOS or an ovulation disorder. I will link that in the description below. So if you want natural things, that will be there. There's also some medications. You can, of course, do extreme things like IVF and IUIs and all of those really expensive, kind of awful things that I really don't want you to have to go through. There's also things like Clomid, which I did Clomid. Again, I'll link that video down below on my experience with that. It did give me my daughter, but it was not a fun experience. There's Fermera. There's lots of things that can help you ovulate that are out there, but it sucks because hormones are just never fun to put in your body. So that's my big rant about infertility and PCOS, is that it's hard, and it's much harder than everyone else in the world who ovulates normally. But just know that it's not impossible, and that I believe that you can have a child if that's something that you want to do. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about real quick is treatments. How do we treat this? So a lot of people will take birth control, which will help regulate their periods and can help regulate those hormones to reduce a lot of the symptoms. And of course, if you're trying to get pregnant, that is not something you want to do. So birth control is not for everyone. For me, I have a lot of awful side effects when I take birth control, so I avoid it. That's not something I do, but some people do really well on birth control and they really like it. So definitely talk to your doctor about that, because a lot of people have help from that. Another medication that a lot of people with PCOS take is metformin. Again, I tried that. I had so many negative side effects that it just wasn't worth it to me. But a lot of people find a lot of benefit from that. It helps with the insulin resistance. So if you're struggling to lose weight, and you're just having troubles with your insulin, or maybe you're pre-diabetic or you are diabetic, then that's something that can be helpful for you. Again, you can talk to your doctor about that. And yeah, for me, it did not work, but I know a lot of people who have found a lot of help from metformin, so definitely something that you could try. Other more natural things you could try is healthy lifestyle changes. So if you're not already on a healthy diet, make sure you get on one. The number one diet that I have seen success from people that I know with PCOS would definitely be the keto diet. And that really helps regulate your insulin. So it's a high fat, low carb, kind of like medium protein diet. And I know so many people with PCOS who have changed their lives and felt so much better by doing that. It's a hard diet for sure, but it's one of those that, like, once you get used to it, it's a lot easier. So it would be hard to start, but once you get into it, I promise it gets easier. So that's a really good diet to try. A paleo diet is also one that people find a lot of help with. That's helped me the most, just overall, because I have a lot of things going on, like I said. So like overall, that probably helps the most. If I was just focused on PCOS, I'd probably do keto, but because I have so many things going on, paleo is kind of like the best balance for me. But just try to get healthier, and exercising more regularly can help a ton. Again, it's going to be harder to lose weight than everyone else, but it's still going to benefit you. And by eating a healthier diet and by exercising more, your hormones are going to naturally regulate better. I've noticed whenever I eat crappy for a long time, my hormones get all out of whack, and they start to kind of get a little more normal the better I eat. So that's why I really suggest doing some kind of a healthy diet or a keto diet to just try and balance your hormones and to help you feel a little bit better and help some of those symptoms that are going on. So you guys, if you have PCOS, I'm so sorry. It is the worst. We just talked about all the symptoms, and every time I think about it, I'm just like, oh my gosh, these are the worst symptoms. Why do we have to deal with this? I don't know. But we are in this together, my friend. We're doing this together. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Please leave me a comment below. Let me know what's the hardest part about PCOS for you. What are you struggling with the most? For me, it's definitely the infertility side of it that's the hardest for me, because I just love kids, and that's like I just want to be fertile and have all the children, you know? And so that's the hardest part for me, for sure. But it's definitely doable. We can live with this disease. It's awful and it's not very fun, but we can live with this, and we are in it together, my friends. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you guys next time.